Yo, what's going on gamers? It's Ryan 6 days a week. And if you haven't been paying attention to Dark and Darker at all, then you probably wouldn't know about the newest addition to the game, the multi-class system. As of hotfix 42 last week, every class that is level 35 and above can randomly select any perk, skill, or spell from a master class that you have, or in other words, a class that is at least level 30. Of course, since balance has always been a hot topic in the Dark and Darker community, the system was met with some controversy, seeming to lean towards the side that it should be reverted. I, however, think it should stay, but in a more limited form. It may be restricted to subclassing into just one other class, or only allowing for 2 or 3 multi-classable perks, skills, and spells. Or just make the perks, skills, and spells that you multi-class some sort of weaker form of the current perks, skills, and spells of that native class. Honestly, I've really been enjoying the multi-class chaos so far, and it's the most fun that I've had in the game for a while. But in its current state, some combinations are just a little bit too strong, and it overall makes a pretty unwelcome experience for new players or people just getting back into the game. Now, before I ramble on about my thoughts on this feature, I'll let you see some Slayer Bard gameplay, which was the first multi-class build I tried out since I got pretty lucky with the rolls. The general idea for this build is 5-song Bard with Sprint and then Sword Mastery and Rapier Mastery. So a ton of damage, attack speed, and if you are into it, you can kill both bosses in less than a minute using just a blue rapier and absolutely nothing else. I'm not necessarily using this footage in any way to sway you in a direction, but I just want to show what the combat looks like now for those who haven't played with the new multi-class system yet. I also want to read through some comments on my last poll that I felt either captured the general feeling of the community well or critiqued the first iteration of the system constructively. I didn't have time to go through everyone's comments, so most of these were just ones pushed up to me by the upvote system, which is kind of your way of saying that you agree with it. The first one comes from The Lore. The more I play, the more I begin to understand the nature of the chaos and how to better navigate this new layer of uncertainty. It adds a flavor of creativity to the game and keeps things interesting. Right now, it's hard to say if it's good or bad for the game. The opinions out there about multi-classing seem to be mixed. It either needs more time, or it's been introduced too early. I agree with this comment, especially the line about how multi-classing keeps things interesting. I know The Lore and a lot of the other top PvPers tend to find combat at the higher level kind of one-dimensional in a class-based system. Essentially, you have good matchups and bad matchups, and for the most part, they tend to dictate how the fight will go unless one of the players makes a severe mistake. Spudhunter had a good video on it some time ago about how every matchup at the high end of PvP was just rock, paper, scissors, which again, is just one of the results of a class-based system. Multiclassing, however, shakes that up a bit. You don't really enter a fight knowing how it's going to proceed, and for the most part, you don't really know how it's going to end. Next, we have Nixternal 4108, and they said, wish they went subclassing route instead. And I also agree with this, assuming that it's to my definition of subclassing, which is you get to pick perks, skills, and spells from just one class, opposed to every single other class. Which to me makes sense. I think that adds just enough complexity and confusion to the combat without making it so chaotic. I think a prime example of this is, well, the Warlock with cleric spells, healing, and then self-healing, plus wizard spells give it a little too much flexibility in combat. And you see this most apparently in threes. Any kind of spell casting that is self-sustainable and is also a team support class is a little too much control. It adds too many players to the trio's combat. Next we have CocoYo9754, and they said multiclassing is a fun experiment, but ultimately suffers from several issues such as requiring an extreme grind, many balance issues, unpredictability in fights, as well as breaking class identity, causing some classes to just simply do another class's job better, thanks to having better stats or exclusive gear. As it is, I don't think multiclassing is a good mechanic, and I feel it is overall not beneficial for the long-term health of the game. Now, Coco did mention a lot of what we already brought up, but I do want to take a look at specifically their breaking class identity line. Since some classes are gonna be a lot weaker than others in terms of what stats they have or what weapons they have access to. We're kind of already seeing this effect with the Cleric. The Cleric doesn't start off with any ranged utility or weapons, making them a terrible host class for multi-classing. I would say a lot of people right now are only leveling up Cleric just for its access to its perks, skills, and spells. Nothing else. They usually just throw those spells on maybe Warlock or Wizard, or smite at some high attack speed classes like Fighter, Rogue, or Bard. Now, we are very much still in the early stages of multiclassing. I do see Iron Mace adding some incentive to leveling up a single class in the future, but right now that incentive is not here, so these are just opinions on the current multi-class system. Next we have T. Larson 1221. I think it's fun. Lowering XP requirements to level was a great choice. Staring at the dozens of hours it would take to grind out different classes, even just a 35 was making me think I might take a break for a bit. Now it feels rewarding to level your different classes again. Balance wise, it is a nightmare, but I think it could be solved by just nerfing skills, perks, only when taken on a non-native class. Clerics got Smite and Divine Protection nerfed because they were too strong on other classes, which doesn't make sense in my opinion. I actually do like this idea a lot. If they end up not going the subclass route, I think having a nerf overall on any inherited perks, spells, and skills would be a good way to solve the class identity crisis. I think this is a great example too, with Smite getting nerfed and Divine Protection getting nerfed on the Cleric, because on the Cleric class itself, they weren't too strong of spells and skills, just because, you could just run away as soon as the Cleric pops them. But on a high attack speed class, or high movement speed class I should say, they're almost impossible to escape, making their pre-nerf form a little bit too strong. And one last one, we have Meme Shorts 9876 saying they scraped for what I thought was the original idea, being that the training system would enhance your own class perks by percent or modify the talent text to add more benefit, like a simple talent tree does in MMO RPGs, but no, they went for the it's easier to use in already made perks from other classes and use it for yourself strat, and went with this. As expected, you couldn't pull a fast one over the player base, and once again, they turned against dark and darker. Now, I don't think the devs are necessarily trying to conspire against their own game. I don't think they're trying to pull a fast one over the player base. But I do want to take this comment to look at talent trees, which, hey, if you asked me about talent trees maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I would have said, hey, that's a cool idea, should be implemented. But I think if they were implemented now with this player base and the meta, so to say, in the game, I don't think it would change much. I think people would just level up the exact same skills that they're using, and instead of gear diffing players, we'll run into issues of people perk diffing players, which again, rewards the grinders, and I think Iron Mace and the general population of the player base does not want that. There should be some reward to grinding, but having your class perks, skills, and spells themselves be the reward, I don't think is the way to go. Once you fall behind in a talent tree system, there's very little motivation to keep grinding and catch back up. I mean, let's be honest. If you go into HR right now with no gear, you could exit with some pretty good items just from one match, and be fairly competitive in PvP if you know what you're doing. With a talent tree system, you will always be at a disadvantage if you're not constantly kept up. Alright gamers, that's all I have for this video. Next video, I'm going to reroll my perks and we're going to build the heavy metal bard. So basically a bard with a bunch of defense and magic resistance, and just see how it goes. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.